Mr. President, when I gave my first speech on the Senate floor 12 years ago, or when I cast my first vote in the House 26 years ago, I had really no way to anticipate the challenges and opportunities that were ahead of us. I come to the floor today grateful to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and on both sides of the Capitol. When we agree and when we don't, we're bound by the Constitution to seek a more perfect union. Of course, I'm most grateful to Missourians who've given me the chance to work for them as a county official, as Missouri Secretary of State, and in both the United States House and the United States Senate. Missouri is where the country comes together. The North meets the South, the East meets the West. No states have more states at its borders than us, and only one as many states as we have. We've been the population center of America for the last 5 decades, kind of moving down Interstate 44 as the population has moved west and south. We sit in the middle of the biggest piece of contiguous agricultural farmland in the world, and the only one that has its own built-in transportation system, the Mississippi River Valley. St. Louis is sometimes described as the westernmost eastern city, and Kansas City really maybe more like Denver and Omaha than it is St. Louis. Springfield, where I live, kind of looks to the west and the south, to Tulsa and to Fayetteville. The boot heel of our state is the Delta South in every way. The economy, the topography, what happens there is reflective of other places more than it is the rest of our state. I was in northern Missouri quite a bit this summer, and northern Missouri, those 2 counties that border Iowa, one of the people with me one day when I was Secretary of State said, when we're up here, I always feel like we're on top of the world. And I never go to northern Missouri now unless I feel like I'm on top of the world. Of course, every senator thinks their state is unique, and it is. A couple of years ago, I spent a few minutes each day trying to figure out, for about a period of 6 months, wondering how the other 99 members got here. And with a couple exceptions, I was able to figure it out. There's still some question in my mind about a couple of our friends, but as I looked at it, I figured out somebody has unique people skills, other people have extraordinary political skills. Maybe it's the ability to quickly understand complicated things or the ability to explain complicated things so that other people can understand them. Most of the time, however, we just have an incredible amount of wasted talent. If you could take the collective talent of the 100 United States senators and make the most of it, there is absolutely no telling what might happen. Now, part of that's because the Senate isn't expected to work efficiently. We don't have many rules, and what does get done usually gets done by either unanimous consent or total exhaustion. Those are our 2 stopping points. Our federal government was designed by people who didn't trust government and didn't want too much of it. They made it hard to get things done. They opted for inefficiency, and that inefficiency is really mind-boggling to people who are more familiar with the parliamentary system, where if it doesn't get done, if it isn't efficient, it fails. We certainly aren't built that way. We've clearly found new levels of inefficiency in the past decade. One big bill at the end of the year to fund the government, plus whatever the 4 leaders of the House and Senate can agree to add to it. And once again, we're at that year-ending process to cobble together some kind of result. Now, the only thing worse than the way we do it would be not doing it. The only thing worse than the way we do it, we just decide not to get our work done and see what happens. So we're once again down to the next 4 weeks to get our work done, or even better, the next 3 weeks. Wouldn't be bad if we got it done in the next 2 weeks, but we're following a pattern here, in my view, we followed for too long. You know, I've seen the standard process of regular order work. In my first decade in the Congress, it never worked perfectly, but it came pretty close to the standard that had been set for for 2 centuries. There's a good reason for how a bill becomes a law, whether you first saw it on a film strip, like I probably did, or Schoolhouse Rock, like my kids did. You know how it's supposed to work. Members of a committee and staff who know the most about an issue, they hold hearings, they mark up a bill, the bill's to be debated and amended on the floor of both the House and the Senate before it goes to the President to be signed or vetoed. For 225 years, the topics of what to fund and how to pay for it dominated the congressional debate. And we frankly need to get back to that, where people see what's going on and members feel bought into what's going on. But then and now, during that whole time, whether regular order was working or not, the rules of the Senate really require finding someone on the other side to work with. There have never been more than 56 popularly elected Republican senators, and only a handful of times have there been 60 or more Democrats. Finding someone on the other side to work with produces the most lasting results. A couple of Congress ago, there were 52 on my side and 48 on the other side. My staff decided it'd be interesting, came to me one day and said, we just thought it'd be interesting to check and see how many of the 48 Democrats you'd figured out how to be the principal sponsor of a bill with. And the answer was 44. I thought that was a pretty good number. My point then and now is you don't have to agree on everything to work together. You just have to agree on one thing. And if you find that one thing you agree on, and frankly, particularly if you're successful, both the members working together and their staffs think, well, gee, we could do that again. In healthcare research, Senator Murray and I, along with Chairman Cole on the House side and the ranking member and then Chairman DeLauro, worked together to significantly change NIH research. Senator Klobuchar, and I've done lots of things together. We've worked on the travel economy, and it's a big part of our economy. We worked to rewrite the workplace harassment standards for the Senate. We worked on adoption issues. Senator Brown and I passed a bill, advanced manufacturing. We'd known each other for years. Once we figured out we could pass one bill together, we passed 5. It has a good effect. Senator Stabenow and I have worked so hard on certified community behavioral health centers. We've worked on this for well over a decade now. We've made, I think, incredible progress. Neither of us would have gotten that done by ourselves. Senator Capito and Shaheen and Portman and Manchin all worked with me and our committee on opioid and dependency issues. We were making real progress. I think the pandemic set that progress back, but shouldn't stop us from moving forward. Senator Coons founded with me the Law Enforcement Caucus. We've worked every time it came up to expand and the Victims of Child Abuse Act, the volunteer community efforts. The other retiring members I'd want to mention that I've worked with as well, Senator Leahy and Senator Shelby, both on the Appropriations Committee and the Rules Committee. You know, on the Appropriations Committee, I got to see the last of Senator Inouye and Senator Cochran still at their best, Barbara Mikulski, people who didn't have to have a perfect result to have a result, and it was wonderful to get to watch them work. Senator Inhofe, obviously totally focused on what it takes to defend the country. He was here for his remarks, his farewell speech the other day, and pointed out that he'd found somebody that he didn't agree with on hardly anything, Barbara Boxer, and they came up with public works bill after public works bill. Senator Burr, who's leaving, has been my chairman in the Intelligence Committee and so capable and so knowledgeable in that committee. He's been really incredibly helpful to me. Senator Portman and I have been at the leadership table in both the House and the Senate. I've been in more meetings with Bob Portman than I've ever been with anybody that I've never served on a committee with, and it's been great. Pat Toomey, of course, brings incredible understanding of finance issues and the economy. My longest relationships, of course, are with my House colleagues, Senator Thune, Senator Moran, and I all came to the House at the same time, along with Senator Stabenow. Senator Moran, Senator Bozeman, and I all came to the Senate together from the House. Senator Cardin, Senator Graham, Senator Cassidy, Senator Blackburn, Senator Brown, Senator Wicker, and others have been part of my work life for a long, long time. Together, we faced big challenges. After 9/11, we saw a new terrorist threat. I was in the middle of that discussion of continuity of government, the sudden realization that our government could dramatically change, and we hadn't thought about what might happen if it did change. Dick Gephardt, who my fellow Missourian, the Democratic leader at the time, and I came up with this structure for post-9/11 compensation for victims that worked, and unfortunately, it's worked following now with a number of tragedies, but it was something I was able to be there as we put it together. At that time, President Bush said we'd bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies. And 4 presidents have now followed that standard. For me, legislative highlights would, of course, include what happens at NIH, where I've been able to be part of increasing by 50% over 8 years with Senator Murray and others, the commitment we made to healthcare research. I mentioned Senator Stabenow earlier, but the mental health efforts, the changing that I think we've all seen here in just the last few years of how we talk about that issue and how we understand we need to respond to that issue is something I'm particularly proud of. Now, maybe have a bill with Senator Heinrich, the Recovering America's Wildlife Act, that every conservation group in America is supportive of. Maybe we can add that to the list of things that I'm going to consider a great accomplishment before we leave here, and it has to go in that big bill I talked about earlier that we put together here at the end. I've had an incredible opportunity to be responsible for 2 inaugurations. It's one of the most important things we do, that particular event, not me being responsible for it. 100 million people watch live. Tens of millions of people around the world watch all or part of it after that. It's so important we get it right. In 2017, I decided our theme would be the peaceful transition of power. And I remember at both inaugurations, I quoted, the only thing I repeated, I think, at those 2 inaugurations, it was President Reagan who said in 1981, what we do here today is commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. 2021, I said, well, this time let's talk about our need to have a more perfect union. The founders didn't promise a perfect union. They were in that place pretty reasonable in their anticipation of what we could do and what we could be. But they did promise a more perfect union, and that's the effort we continue to be part of. To get all of that done, so many other people have to make it possible. All of us appreciate every one of our families. And I think we all appreciate each other's families because better than anybody else, we know what families mean and how important it is that your family's part of this. My mom and dad were dairy farmers. They never suggested there were any limits to what a person could do in America. No sense that you couldn't do everything you wanted to do. I'm most grateful to Abby, my wife. I wouldn't be in the Senate and wouldn't have stayed as long in the House as I did if Abby hadn't been willing to work so hard to make it easier for me, what I love to do. And we are full partners, and I am grateful for that. All of my children, and even their children, were too often being asked to defend what I did or what I believed, or more often what people assumed I believed. But they got to be part of history too. Charlie Blunt was flying on Air Force One with President Bush on his 2nd birthday. Who gets to do that? I will admit, though, however, no one in my family ever said, I wish you'd quit, but when I did decide I was going to leave 2 years ago, I noticed that no one said, are you sure? Except Abby, who did say, are you sure? I've often said if you can only have one skill, that one skill should be hiring. And what a great staff that skill and good luck have produced for me. My incredible Chief of Staff, Stacy McBride's been responsible for so much of what we've gotten done. My Deputy Chief for the state, Derek Coates, led a great team that did so much for our state and in helping people deal with the federal government. My Deputy Chief of Staff here, Richard Eddings, is, along with me, completing 26 years in the Congress and 26 years of working together. He managed the details for the Whip's office in the House and the details for our office in the Senate. The Rules Committee staff takes responsibility to help manage the daily infrastructure of the Senate. No issues too small or too big, from everything from security decisions for the presidential inauguration to a recent call to ask whether we could release someone's pet owl in the Russell courtyard so that owl would have a home and we'd all appreciate it. Senator Klobuchar and I quickly decided it probably wouldn't be good for the Russell courtyard or the owl, and so the owl was not released. The Republican Policy Committee staff deals with every vote on the floor, every nomination, every issue. There's a paper out there explaining all of those things, every bill that's been filed, every amendment, even to the dreaded vote-a-rama. That staff is getting an amendment ready so voters know what they're seeing. Let me end this farewell with two things. One's another thank you to Missouri voters. You know, my view of the need to find a solution to a problem really took place and took shape in the Greene County Courthouse. I've been in all 115 of our counties since I announced I wasn't going to run again. There's been some question in my house as to the judgment of that schedule, but we're through that now, so it's done. And, you know, in a lot of those courthouses, I was visiting with county officials. I said, in my view, there's nowhere in America you're more likely to get a solution to a governmental problem than a county courthouse, filled with local elected officials who want to do everything they can possibly do for you to feel like you left with everything done that could possibly be done. And then, you know, to be the first Republican Secretary of State elected in Missouri in 52 years when I won that office in 1984, I never thought my leading argument was, why don't you vote for the first Republican ever? I thought it was, if you vote for me, I'll do this job and you'll be pleased that you did give me a chance to do it. So grateful to them and grateful to that experience. And then a story that Senator Klobuchar has told more often than I have. When I became the Chief Deputy Whip, on my way to becoming the Whip of the House, at the first month of my second term in the Congress, I moved from the Cannon Building to the Capitol Building, and I looked up on the top of a bookcase in my office, my new office in the Congress, and there was this bust of a person up there. And I said to my staff, well, let's find out who that is. And so they come back a couple of weeks later, and they've got these newspaper articles from the 30s and the 60s, and they say, well, nobody knows who that is. And it's obvious when you get that bust down and look at it that it's a cleric. And so it was the unknown cleric, and it's been with me ever since. It's in one of my offices here. The point of the unknown cleric, this is a bust that was put in the Capitol probably no earlier than 1830. And by 1930, nobody had any idea who it was. I had lots of meetings with new freshman members in the House when I was the whip, and a number of meetings with people just who happened to be around and would listen to this. I said, the point of this is somebody famous enough that they'd make a bust and put it in the Capitol and then forget who they are. The point is, what we do here is more important than who we are. Thanks for letting me do part of it with you. And Mr. President, I yield the floor.